Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is my friend Bernie DeSantis. Say hi.
Hi.
I was so tempted to add Mr. Mustache. You know what? I'm just going to do it. Bernie, Mr. Mustache DeSantis. We're going to make it that calling card. I love it.
Love it.
Well, tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the owner of Insignia Training Partners. We are a full service learning and development company that provides contract, or the new word is fractional, resources in learning and development to organizations to help them complete, design, develop, deploy their training programs. We specialize in virtual training and workshops, and we are industry, product, and service agnostic. So I don't really care what your widget is necessarily, just whether or not you have a learner involved. And if you do, we're able to help.
Oh, that's fantastic. How did you get into that?
So I have been in learning and development for close to 20 years now. I'm actually the second owner of Insignia. I purchased the company January 1st of 2022. So I'm just over my second year of ownership. That was after working within the business for 5 years as a consultant, contract facilitator, and virtual producer. But I got my start at Quicken Loans a little over 2 decades ago. I was their very first leadership development trainer. My role there was as an experiential trainer. So that was really, really fun. What I got to do was take participants, up and coming leaders in the organization, and we would go out and do ropes courses or SWAT team trainings. And we would build these full day immersive missions around the very same leadership skill sets that they would use in the office every day, right? Things like communication, problem solving, teamwork, strategic thinking. But as you can imagine, the breakthroughs that people have when they're suspended 3 stories up in the air or have rubber bullets flying by their head, they were pretty profound. Most people would take something very, professional, how they interacted with their team, or how they manage stress, or how they manage their projects, as an example. But for some people, it was really, really personal. After we would debrief all of the missions, they would go home and have conversations with their spouse or their kids or even their parents that in some cases they had put off for months or even years. And it was that combination of feedback that really lit my fire for learning and development, recognizing really early that I could be, standing up on a ropes course or on a stage, or, now in this day and age on camera, and actually impact people's lives, how they approach their day to day. That was really, really cool for me and very fulfilling. Even, today, being the owner of Insignia, I don't, get to be on camera or on stage quite as much, but that is why I get up and do what I do every day, knowing that I can have an impact, a positive impact on people's careers and in some cases their personal life.
That is such an interesting story. And a couple of things that I lit up on was, okay, so a couple years ago, I had my first live event, and I don't have a background in like education or training. And I just had a theory of what I wanted to accomplish, and I wanted it to be different from every other event that was out there. So I invited several friends to Vegas. My theory is so dumb, but I love it. Could I get business buddies out to Vegas on the premise of we're going to talk business and we're going to drive bulldozers? And the answer is yes. I mean, you can get entrepreneurs to do just about anything. I didn't have a curriculum when I went out to my people and said, here's what I'm thinking. Would you be in? And people were like, hell yes. But what happened, and as it turns out, everybody that said yes was a woman or presented as a woman. And we went to this company out in Vegas called Dig This. Shout out to Edmund and the team. They were fantastic. And what happened there was, and I didn't find this out until after the fact. So I didn't design this way. That's why I'm trying to like articulate my thoughts on the fly here. I didn't do this with intent, but what I discovered after the fact and talking to people was that everybody was a little bit scared. They were excited, but they were like, oh my gosh, this is so far out of what I normally do on a day-to-day basis. I'm worried about whether I can do this. I'm worried about whether I can mess things up. And the team at Dig This had everything so well laid out. It was one instructor for every 2 people. So we actually felt like we knew what we were doing. It was like, hey, Julie, push this button, Angie, push this paddle, like, and we're spinning around in a 6-ton excavator. It's bizarre, right? But we left that and we went right into a creative brainstorming session, and everybody's like, oh my God, I feel like I can kick through walls. I feel like anything is possible. I feel like I'm ready for my excuses about why I can't do this or I can't do that, or like they're just gone now. And it was just such a cool experience as somebody that doesn't have the educational background, like, oh, hey, we started out with something fun and we actually learned something about ourselves. How cool is that?
Yeah, really, really cool. And I've seen a lot of experiential events in throughout the course of my 20 years. One guy that I met recently, he does a whole experiential day using Legos.
Ooh, I must know more.
Such a cool program that he's got. I'll have to look him up for you and introduce you, but absolutely amazing. Full 8-hour day, and all you're doing is doing these little missions throughout the course of the day with Legos. Maybe it's you have somebody communicating from a different room how you build that thing, or just a variety of different topics that he covers. But imagine business learning, and all you're
Mm-hmm.
doing all day is playing with Legos. So cool.
Well, that's so funny. A few weeks ago, I posted on social media that I have a theory, and of course, I haven't written and paid it off just yet. But I was asking people if we were in a room together building Legos, and I knew nothing about this guy, so this is really funny. It's like, how would you approach building something super awesome and cool? Would you be like, I need the direction packet and I need everything sorted into piles, and then I build it step by step? Do I need to look at the finished project and reverse engineer from there? Do I just need to like build whatever my heart is telling me to build today, whether or not it meets the end goal of the super cool thing we're building or something else? And the funny thing is, I had a whole bunch of people say something else, but then they all wrote in and said something very, very similar, which was like, I need to understand who we're building this for, why we're building this, what this is going to accomplish at the end of the day. And then I can figure out which one of those categories I'm in. And I just thought that was really funny. I wonder if he has a similar like outcome or program design.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Super funny. We get to play. I think business is adult playtime when done right. And if we're building a business that makes us miserable, then boo on that.
Yeah, that sucks, and kind of missing the point.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So you bought this business, and I presume just really bought that because you enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I absolutely love pouring into other people, whether it's standing on stage, coaching, mentoring, whatever the case may be. It's actually an interesting story how it came up. The first few projects that I worked on with my predecessor, they were pretty high profile projects with Ford Motor Company. We were working with Ernst and Young at the time, Hertz Rent a Car. And, I always got great results when I was in corporate, not to pat myself on the back too much, but, always were able to show great results. And I got similar results on these projects. And as they were ramping down, I went back to my predecessor and I said, Ann, I really enjoy this lifestyle, right? I like the option of being able to choose which clients I work with or don't, which is a blessing, making
Yeah.
better money than I ever did in corporate. I really am enjoying the variety of projects. How do I get more involved? How do I do more of this? How can I help you? And she came back and said, well, listen, Bernie, I've been running this business for 15 years and I absolutely love it. But I'm ready to retire. And I've been looking for someone to sell the company to for about 2 years now. But I didn't want to just sell it to somebody who would ultimately tear it apart or not take care of my clients in the way that I have all these years. And I've never had feedback or results like I've got from you. I think you're the right person to take this over. So kind of Godfather-esque minus the horse's head in the bed. She made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And, here I am today.
Okay, I love that. That is a great way to brighten up my Wednesday. We didn't have the horse in the bed, but that's fantastic. I love, and I want to unpack this for other people, especially like if you are at the beginning stages of your business. This is the power of asking for what you want in action. I was talking to a new coaching client just the other day who said, well, but I don't feel like I can reach out to somebody after we had this call because like they know who I am and they know what I offer. And I figure they'll reach out if they have a need. And I said, okay. And often we think we're being super clear in our own heads, but we haven't really closed the loop and said, if you want to do X, Y, or Z, here are your next steps. So in those instances, sometimes I go back and I look at my messages and I ask myself, have I been clear? And if I haven't, or if I think that I can get their attention and show them my enthusiasm for this project or this consulting, whatever we're about to do, I will take a chance and reach out and say, in case I didn't make it clear, I really, really like what you're doing and I would love to be involved. And here are some things that I'm thinking. Here are some ideas that I have. Would love to talk about this with you further. Right. I'll just try to keep the conversation going instead of assuming they know what I want and assuming that telling them what I want or asking for what I want is some sort of inconvenience, because it's not.
So, no, I mean, the worst thing that they're going to say is no, right? And we've heard no throughout our entire lives. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. But for me personally, I would rather have that hard no and no for sure than a soft maybe, right? And sitting there wondering whether or not it's going to work out. I would rather go in, ask the question. If they say no, cool, then that means I can move on to the next opportunity, the next project. But that soft maybe, it causes anxiety. Like, you sit there and you wonder.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Oh my gosh. And I think I used to lean toward like the maybe, because in the back of my mind, hope is still alive as long as I don't have a no. But now I prefer the no, because I would like to just, okay, cool. Well, then I don't have to follow up with this person. Like, this is no longer a priority for me to pursue. I'm absolutely going to keep in touch with them, but now I'm moving on to other things and I'm not letting that occupy my brain space anymore.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. And like, we've heard no all our lives. Friendly reminder that it hasn't killed us yet. Like, to my knowledge, I'm alive. No hasn't killed me. It has broken my heart a time or two, but Indeed. I'm still here, still resilient, still showing up, still doing my thing. And the other thing that you said I thought was really cool. So you put yourself out there, you ask for what you want, and you get an unexpected offer, right? I've been looking for someone to sell this to. I talked about this with someone last year that I used to have a partnership with. We were talking about the merits of building a consultancy that was designed to sell. And on the one hand, I like that, right? Please, I'll sell a company and I'll use that to go finance something else I want to build. And then on the other hand, I ran into the same issue that your predecessor did, where I was like, but will they care? Will they go the extra mile like I would? That makes me a little bit leery and skeeved out. So I found that interesting that was not, like, I'm not the only person, clearly, to think about something like that.
Well, I think most of us, when we get into business, obviously we're doing it to earn a living, right? And to take care of our families and such. But a lot of us get into the business that we're in because we are passionate about it, because we love it, because we love serving those clients. And so, the business that you build is ultimately a reflection of you. Even though you may sell it to someone else, you're still looking at it as your baby, right? And so if they take it and do something that you wouldn't necessarily like to see done with it, you look at that as a reflection on yourself at the end of the day.
I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
Was she able to, and I say this with more curiosity, like not any, was she able to disconnect and let Bernie take over, or
she did? Yeah, she did a fantastic job. I would say that she is 98% retired. I'm still able to call her in when necessary.
Oh, that's the best. That is the best kind of working relationship. Well, tell me a little bit about the process. So it's one thing to be a consultant in this business and work really well with the owner. What was it like stepping into that, okay, now this is my business and I have to run it role?
Honestly, it was a kick in the teeth. I am a really good, or at least so I'm told, a really good facilitator, trainer, virtual producer, an okay instructional designer. But being able to do all of those things, being a role player and being really good at it doesn't necessarily equate to successfully running a business, right? It's not all that difficult to stand at the front of a room or on camera and be an engaging speaker. But that is not sales and business development, as an example, right? Like, when I started my career at Quicken Loans 20 years ago, I started off as a mortgage banker, making 100 phone calls a day, right? The smile and dial routine. And I hated it. It was not what I wanted to be doing with my career. So now here I am 20 years later doing that exact thing, right? I'm reaching out to people on LinkedIn, cold, DMing or sending emails, or in some cases making those cold calls. And it doesn't fulfill my soul to have to do those things, but I definitely like to have a full plate. I like to be able to eat every day. So I had to get over those things pretty quickly. And when we're talking about, my business in particular, learning and development, Dips in the economy, as an example, are really significant to this business. When you talk about, as an example, the layoffs that are happening right now in the corporate business world, a lot of those people getting laid off are the service providers, your training folks, your marketing folks, right? All of the people who don't necessarily add revenue to the bottom line, they're the ones who go first. And then the second thing to go is any of those large scale initiatives or training projects. So that very directly impacts, my business. So, coming to terms and understanding all of the different nuances of running a business as opposed to just working within it was very eye opening, and frankly, learned some very painful lessons along the way. One of which, as an example, my predecessor was very proud of the fact that she never spent any money on marketing or advertising. Everything that she did was through word of mouth and networking. When I took over the company, I made it a point that I was going to redo the website, and I was going to have a social media presence, and I was going to start advertising, and I was going to create, email campaigns and all of these grand ideas. But then I realized how much money and time it takes to do all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And, quite frankly, I spent a lot of time just running myself ragged. I would easily work 12, 13, 14 hours a day doing all of those things because in my head, I've got to do them in order to be successful. And you do need to do all of those things to be successful. And I won't say that I was doing those things because I felt like I had to. I did, but I felt like as a business owner, I should be focused on those things, and I'm passionate about what I'm doing. So missing lunch, not a big deal for me because I loved what I was doing. I was really happy about doing those things, but they do take time and they do take money. And if you don't recognize your budget, as an example, right, and your versus your revenue, your return on investment, if you're not thinking about those things, they catch up with you really quickly.
Yes, they do. And it's fun. I feel like word of mouth and referrals have been a consistent theme in conversations I've had with other entrepreneurs lately, because a lot of folks had a word of mouth or referral based business until the recent economic challenges. When, like you mentioned, there's layoffs, there's a tightening of belts in a lot of places, and it's harder. Those people aren't buying things as much. So now what do you do? I think a lot of people are having to develop sales systems of some sort. The funny thing is, for me, in developing sales systems, it's been a combination. My business coach and I were talking about this recently because this is a learning journey for me as well. I have been referral based my entire career, and that was super easy for me when I was a copywriter. When I left my last role and started my consulting, started the podcast, was focused on writing the book, the initial inquiries I got were like, oh, you left that guy's copy team. Could you come write copy for me now? And so I had to learn how to say no to those projects, knowing that I wanted to move out of it. And then I've also had to figure out how to own my own sales process beyond just, oh, if somebody thinks of Angie, I put myself out there, I put some content out there, and eventually people are going to come to me. Like, no, I feel like there needs to be a better discussion about outbound versus inbounds. And there are so many marketers out there teaching inbound as the end all be all. And I just want to like shake people. That's not it.
Unfortunately, it's not as much as you'd like it to be, right? People just bringing you up saying, "Hey, I want your services."
Yeah.
That's not typically how it works.
It's part of the long range business plans.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And every business should have a plan to build a platform, bring people to you, reverse that lead flow so that you're not going out there and chasing things. And chasing is probably the wrong word, but like in a sense, you have to go out there and chase business when you're in growth mode. Um, it's funny. Isn't that your chapter of
It
Success
is.
Champions is growth
Yep.
mode engaged?
Growth mode engaged.
Unintentional plug there for the win. Bernie and I met actually through a conference last year, and we sat at the same table at the Badass Business Summit. Shout out to Donnie and the crew, and talked marketing and things like that. But where I really gained enthusiasm and became a Bernie fan was when we were at karaoke nights, singing at a business conference. It was so much fun. So yeah, hey, if you're listening to this, come to the Badass Business Summit with us. Another plug
That's
there.
right.
So tell me a little bit more about this journey, like figuring out how to put yourself out there, how to get more clients when you've got all these systems to build, you've got these things that are competing for your time, and you've got a new baby.
Yeah, I do. I have a 6-month-old daughter, so adding that into the mix has added some fun challenges, right? I mean, I absolutely love being a dad. She's amazing. She is now getting into that bear crawl, not quite crawling yet, but like she can get herself up there. Still trying to figure out how to move all four of her limbs in concert. But adding that in was certainly another layer of complexity to it all. As far as my sales process and what I'm doing for business development, really a lot of it goes back to networking and Success Champions very specifically. When I first became owner of the business, I, again, rebuilt my website and started doing some posting on LinkedIn and such, started doing some active networking. But I didn't realize that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was going into almost every one of those conversations and pitch slapping the hell out of people, which unfortunately does not really work if you don't know that. I definitely encourage you to come visit a Success Champions networking and get some training on that. But, the other piece of it, not only was I pitch slapping people, I was also going to the wrong groups, which I didn't realize was a thing. When you're talking about networking, there's different types of groups that are out there, B2C versus B2B. And I was going to so many B2C networking groups, not realizing that really wasn't my tribe, wasn't really where I needed to be. Spent countless hours in those meetings and then doing virtual coffees and one-on-ones with people that, I'm glad to have them in my network. I'm glad that we got to build a bit of a relationship and have that conversation. But at the end of the day, it wasn't leading to more closed business. So,
Yeah.
once I met Donnie and kind of got a little bit of education around how to effectively network and focus very specifically on B2B style business development, started to see things turn the corner a little bit. Very specifically, I learned more about how to talk about my business in a non-pitchy way. That was really, really important. Being able to explain what I'm doing and how it works to people who are not familiar with learning and development and what needs to happen. Really kind of planted our flag again in that virtual space over the course of COVID. But I came to recognize through some of this networking just how many small business owners, coaches, consultants, authors, independent trainers there are out there that get completely overlooked by most service providers. They just don't pay attention to that market. One of my clients through a partner company is Johnson and Johnson. And, as an example, they do about 200 webinars a month, global town halls, literally thousands of
Wow.
people. And if one of them doesn't go well, it's probably not going to break their business. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
But, a small business owner, an independent coach or consultant that's doing workshops in Zoom, they might do 2 or 3 of them a month. And if one of them doesn't go well, that could really significantly impact their business. And I came to recognize just how important it is to support these folks. And so I've started to, as opposed to just going after big enterprise level clients, which I like those obviously because they're the ones that keep the lights on for the most part. But I feel like I'm really having a significant impact in that marketplace, which I didn't even know, frankly, existed, even though I am a small business myself.
It's funny how that level of awareness like changes the further that you go down the path. And sometimes that's something that you can only learn by going down the path. I feel like that has happened to me a lot too. Just this sudden awareness of, oh, that was me 5 years ago, or that's where I'm going 10 years into the future. Like I understand this a little bit more than it feels like. And first of all, pitch slapping, I love that. That is going somewhere in the show notes. Second, going to the wrong groups. This is something I've ranted about before, but I spent a lot of time thinking that all networking was good networking. And in a sense, you can't really tell until you get there whether it's a place for you or not, but we've also got to be willing to look at it kind of like dating. Like I'm trying to find the one, and that may mean that I try out a couple of groups in advance that don't quite feel like it. Early in my career, I had this morning networking group that would meet in person for breakfast every Tuesday. And we would talk about business, but after a while, it just felt like we were going through the motions because introduce like ourselves. We would bring guests, we would have a presenter, we would do networking, and then we would get to the goals part and like, these are my goals for the week. And I noticed after a while that it was the same goals every week, myself included, and that there was always an excuse for why these goals weren't happening, why we weren't making progress. And I realized that that had an impact on me, right? I mean, I have agency over how I decide to do things. And I could have been somebody that went, okay, well, you guys aren't hitting your goals, but I'm going to hit mine. But instead, like a human, right? I fell in line with the group and wasn't hitting my goals and eventually decided, well, this really isn't helping me the way that I want it to. And I can stay with these guys. It's a great group of guys, fantastic people building really awesome things, but it's not helping me get toward my goals, and my time would be better suited somewhere else. So I did wind up leaving and finding other groups to be in. And I've visited Growth Mode a couple of times. Need to come join that and be a more permanent fixture in the community. But like, you've got to remember in networking that it's about trying different things, much the same about getting new business, right? I've done everything from dropping flyers on people to cold emailing, cold calling, sending old school letters. I even sent Valentine's Day cards once to past clients. And everything I do teaches me something invaluable, and it does put my name out there and allow people to be like, right, I like Angie, let me work with her. One thing I learned from the Valentine's Day campaign: don't send a Valentine's Day card to somebody you didn't particularly enjoy working with,
Right.
especially if you parted ways, like you really didn't like working with each other. That person may interpret that as a sign that you're trying to pick them up and date them.
Yeah.
Which was definitely not my intent in sending those out. So yeah, try things, put yourself out there, meet new people, detach from the results. That's
Yeah,
what I got out of all
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. I really feel like I've started to turn a corner, particularly in the networking side of it, right?
Awesome.
Because not only talking about my business was an important, right? Make sure I can communicate what it is that I do and how I do it and why it's important, but also being able to communicate who it is that I wanted to be introduced to,
Mm,
right? Like, I went into a lot of those meetings, especially early. Again, I'd go in and I'd pitch slap them with all my services, everything that I could do, but I would never talk about who I wanted to be introduced to, right? Who are
mm,
my referral partners? Who is going to potentially send me business? Because you can go into some of these networking one-on-ones, and that person might not be your ideal client, right? And that's okay, but they might be able to introduce you to your ideal client. And if you're not able to articulate who you want to talk to that person, you've wasted the hour or half hour,
mm-hmm.
however long you spent with them.
Oh, that's so important. Like that, I talked earlier about getting into the discomfort and building my skills with reaching out. So that means that I've had to reach out to my network over the last several months and tell them, hey, I've got this new offer. I'm looking to meet people. And then it was funny. I left like who I was looking to meet just kind of off. I just explained the offer and
Yeah.
why it was really great. Which is already hard enough for me to do because I'm not somebody that is accustomed to being like, glory to Angie, here are all the reasons I'm awesome. Um, Bracking is already something that I struggle to do. So telling people all the reasons why I'm awesome. And like, let's be clear, I recognize that I'm awesome. I have literally got numbers showing that I know what I'm talking about. I just struggle to tell people I know what I'm talking about, and here are the numbers that show you that. So I'm reaching out to people and telling them about this super awesome offer. I'm telling them about the awesome results that it's generating, and I completely leave off the who. And then thankfully, I'm reaching out to people that I know, past podcast guests, uh, people that I have developed a relationship with, and saying, this is what I'm looking to do. And people go, awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about who might be a good fit for this so that I can get some people together? And I went, oh, thank
Oh
you.
yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. I forgot that little piece. Um, it's people in my mind that look like this, that meet these qualifications. And the more I started having those conversations, the more they asked questions that gave me clarity, that allowed me to tailor that email even
Mhm.
more. And now I've got a pretty tight performing email that I send out to someone and they go, oh, that sounds like a really awesome offer. I'll keep my eyes out. And I think I've got somebody to introduce you to. Stay tuned. And it's been a lot easier.
Yep.
Just put it out there. Put it
Yeah,
out there.
absolutely. Yeah, if you can't articulate who it is that you want to talk to and what it is that you do in a clear and concise way, you're not going to meet the people that you want. That's just,
Mm-hmm.
just a fact.
Yeah. And I think that's the funny part about all of this and like why I get up on a soapbox so much about marketing. Marketing is not hard, and I will beat that drum until the day I die. What is hard is figuring out what you do and who you're for. And that's where most people struggle because they're in the well, my product or service could help everybody, so really it's for everybody. No, it's not. And until you start with who you help solve a particular problem, it's going to be really hard to attract people to you, to turn on that attraction engine, right? You're going to have to constantly go out and hunt people down because nobody really knows what you do.
Yeah, exactly true. Exactly
Yeah.
true.
And like, I can be clear, you can build a business doing that. There are plenty of people out there doing businesses like that.
Hmm.
They're struggling to scale. They're struggling to claw back any amount of time. They're struggling to be profitable because they're spending so much time going out there and chasing. Like that's the other piece of this too. And I think it's so perfect that like I'm on this rant with the guy that I would associate to be one of the kings of networking that I know since you run this group. Um, I had this head trash, and tell me if this ever happened for you, that I couldn't contact people I know about growing my business because I would be bothering them. My whole association with networking would be I need to go to this event with a room full of strangers who know nothing about me and convince them of my awesomeness and drop a business card. And that is what networking is. And things really changed for me when I realized, like, no, my network already exists. I have friends and family and relationships going back decades at this point. God, I'm old. Uh, and all of those people are somebody that I would share good news with if something really awesome happened to me. So why can't my good news be I'm starting this particular offer, this particular business, this thing, and I'm looking for people. Could you help me out?
Yeah, absolutely. I ran into a similar thing. When I first started networking, that was my headspace as well. I have to go out and meet new people because
Mm-hmm.
the people that I already know should know what I do and should be out there looking out for me. No, they're not. They are certainly willing to help if you ask them for that help, if you explain to them what you're doing, but that they are not, as much as we'd love to believe it, out there thinking about us every single day as they're going throughout their life. I mean, they very well could be coming across all types of opportunities for you. But if
Mm-hmm.
you never have that conversation with them, if you never
Yep.
let them know what you're doing and what you're looking for, they won't know. And it's not, to your point, it's not activating your network. Obviously you want to talk to new people so that you can continue to grow that network. But the whole point of growing the network is to build those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So if you
Not
already
just
have
to acquire cards.
relationships, you got to go and talk to those people that you have relationships with already.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny, like I struggled with networking so much because of that head trash around, but I can't ask people for something. I need to be able to give stuff too. And one of my colleagues who is in a mastermind with me also struggles with this. I call it Southern woman syndrome because a lot of us that grew up being socialized as women have a lot of trouble asking for things. It makes us feel guilty. It makes us feel like we are imposing on people. And the reverse is actually true. In most instances, I have found out, and taking from my own experience too, if somebody asks me for help and I can provide that help, I get a lot of joy out of seeing somebody succeed, see somebody create this beautiful relationship or partner on something out of like what, a 5-minute introduction from me, a quick phone call from me. I am absolutely happy. That is not going out of my way at all. And I think we've got to learn how to stop treating an ask as an imposition, as an
Mhm.
imperative, as an order, because that is not the case at all. An ask is just a request. They can say yes or no. And as we've already established, no is not going to kill us.
That's right.
We can still love our friends even when they tell us no. And I've told people
Absolutely.
no that have asked me for favors before. I've said, hey, this is a little bit beyond what I currently have time for. If you want to book a call, I've got some availability in a couple of weeks. We could do a quick consult and I could make that happen. Or, hey, I don't really have time or space for that. If you could circle back in a few weeks, I might be able to help then. Right. I tell people no all the time, but I do it with the understanding that this is what makes the network strong, being able to help. And this is why you need to get good at asking people for stuff because you want to encourage them to ask you for stuff too. And this is how we build those relationships
That's
and we
right.
rely on each other and we all grow together.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, because good networking is reciprocal, right? It is a relationship, a give and take, a back and forth. If it's one way, then, it's not really good networking, unfortunately. And if you're doing all of the giving, it gets really tedious really fast. You need to be able to ask for things. And, I'm a big fan of Donnie's approach that he teaches, which is, three gives, then you get, and then you give again. Right.
Hmm.
And it does seem a little bit lopsided, but you're building that relationship equity, right?
Hmm.
Because once you've done something, once you've helped, that law of reciprocity comes back. They're going to be thinking of you and looking for ways to help you. All you have
Yes.
to do at that point is ask.
Hmm. And it's so funny how easy it is to conflate, giving and doing with going above and beyond, which is why I've gotten really good at asking people clarifying questions. So, okay, so what would best help you in this scenario? Okay, you need help growing business, you need help with connections. What are you looking for specifically? Are there people I could introduce you to? Is there a podcast that I could help you get on? Something to that, like give me something specific to roll with, and I'm happy to help you with. Um, it's amazing how often we think we're being clear with our ask. I need some leads. Okay, what does that look like to you though? Does that mean specific introductions? Does that mean that you want to speak on a stage? Don't be afraid to articulate what you want, and you can have multiple goals. Just don't land them, in a thud in somebody's lap. I want to be interviewed on podcasts, and I want to speak on stage, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to do that. I want to do that. Do you have any opportunities for me? Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Could we narrow it down to maybe the top two, and then another two later on after we have gotten
Right.
those two out of the way, right? I think that's the other part of the ask too, is being aware of and trying not to overthink it, right? This is tricky, and there's balance. But balance is movement. It is not static, which is where I think we associate balance with being stuck in one particular point in time and never changing. Balance is movement, which means sometimes you're giving more and sometimes you're taking more, you're receiving more. I like
Yep.
receiving more than taking.
Well, of course.
But you've got to be aware of the fact that if I'm asking somebody for an introduction, that's a slightly different ask than if I'm asking for somebody to get on a call with me and brainstorm new offer potential angles, advertising, things like that, something that's in their wheelhouse. I don't even know if any of that was just clear, but
It's clear to me. I'm picking up what you're laying down.
fantastic. I love it.
Hopefully, our listeners are today too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think this will help folks that are new to networking or they've struggled with networking in the past. Um, Match the ask to the level of the relationship that you've got, right? Um, I wouldn't ask somebody that I have just gotten to know who isn't aware of me and what I can do for an intro to say like somebody high powered, right? I'm not going to waste that early relationship capital on a big ask like that because I understand what I'm asking them to do. I'm asking them to lend some of their reputation to me in making this introduction, this connection. And so I'm going to stay. This sounds really bad as I'm explaining it, but I hope that people can hear my heart behind this. Like, I'm going to stay kind of on my level, people that are in my peer group, right? And I'm going to build that connection. I'm going to help these folks. And then as I reach up and meet more people, I'm going to bring them with me versus trying to like skip over people and skip steps and make big asks. Maybe there are people out there that disagree with me and they say, hey, go straight for the top, go for the jugular, whatever. But this is what works for me.
Well, I think that there's two sides to that coin, right? Because again, the answer could be no, and that's
Mhm.
okay, and you'll never get that no if you don't ask. But I
True.
think that you're spot on. You don't want to have an ask that is too big for the individual that you're talking to because it may take a lot for them to
Mhm.
complete that ask for you, right? They may know the CEO of XYZ organization, but doing so, getting a conversation or an introduction would be way out of their lane, right?
Mhm.
So you do have to be careful about that. And I think that those type of asks, are better for a second or third or fourth meeting, right? Somewhere down the line. Like I said, once you built a little bit of equity in the relationship, they know who you are, you know who they are, you built that, know, like, and trust. I would probably appreciate somebody who asked for someone high level from me on a
Yeah.
first meeting. I'd be like, you've got some balls. And so I would appreciate that. But on the same token, would I necessarily go deep into my Rolodex and pull out, those really trusted people for them? I don't know
Mhm.
that I would on a first call, you
Yeah.
know?
See, and that's a good point. I think that's at the heart of what I was trying to get at, which is it's relationship capital on me to make that introduction too.
Yep.
So if I don't know you really well and I'm introducing you to this person, and maybe you have an off day, right? Everything goes wrong and you don't show up your best, but now my connection is going, hey, what was up with that? I
Right.
don't know why that person wanted to get on the phone with me. Now my connection is looking at me a little bit weird too. So I have to be careful about who I introduce to whom. Now let me be clear. I'm not trying to introduce reasons for you to overthink this or to not reach out. I would rather you make the ask and let the person say no to you. Maybe they'll be generous and give you a reason why they're saying no, but make the ask because you never know what will happen. But also be aware that if you can do these things, like make deposits into this relationship bank before, especially before asking a big ask, um, be willing to help people with their asks, not just looking to get your asks serviced, and match the request. Like understand what you're asking people to do when you ask them. If you're asking them to read a book and write a foreword, that's a completely different ask from making a 2-minute intro to somebody. You know what I mean? So like just be aware of what you're asking people, but make the ask.
Yep. Agreed.
Well, I didn't expect to rant about all kinds of networking things today, but what can I say? You bring it out. This is fantastic. Tell us a little bit more about what you do, where we can learn more about you, and tell us about growth mode too.
Yeah, absolutely. Really the types of projects that we work on again are really anything in learning and development. So that could be instructor led training, that could be virtual trainings, that could be e-learning as well. You get to a point doing this as long as I have with as many, professionals that I've worked with in the L&D space, where you start to recognize there's only so many ways that people learn things, right? There's only so many ways that we can deliver content. And eventually you get to a point where you're kind of able to plug and play that different subject matter in. And so that's why I say, as an organization, we're industry product service agnostic. It really doesn't matter because as an organization, we are learning and development professionals. So we will come in, we will work with you with your subject matter experts. We'll extract all the information that we need. I don't need to be an expert on finance and tax accounting, but you are, and I can pull that information from you and we can build you a dynamite training program. I would also venture to say that, especially now, people really need to be leveraging Zoom as an example, these virtual platforms that we have out there for these types of meetings and trainings, because if you're not, you are missing the boat. There is so much opportunity to connect with people all over the globe, not just in your local community or in your city or your state. I can do an event today for somebody here in Michigan, and then an hour later, I can be doing an event for someone in Australia. It just allows you to have that much more reach. So highly recommend that as well. And I would say as far as the networking goes, Growth Mode Engaged is a B2B national networking group. Right now we're at 16 members. We started with 5 back in October. So we've more than tripled at this point. Heading for 30, I think is really kind of the goal. We want to max out at about 30. And then once we do, we will likely split and then have 2 groups and grow those up. So I'm really excited about that growth. We're bringing in some really great people as well. And I think that's even the more important piece than the quantity or the number is everyone is aligned in how we're networking, who we're networking with. We're all very clear on our asks, what it is that we do in these conversations that we have with people for these virtual coffees and one-on-ones. So, if you're not already networking, if you haven't found your tribe, absolutely recommend that you come and visit a Success Champions networking group, be it mine or any of the ones within the network. Fantastic group to be associated with.
Awesome. Totally agree. I happened to fall into, Badass Business Summit and Success Champions by total accident, but it was through a random intro from my network that I
Yep.
found all these awesome people. And now here we are having this fantastic conversation. I'm going to
Absolutely.
make sure that there are clickable links in the show notes for anybody that wants to come check you out. And thank you so much for being on the show. It was a blast.
Oh, thank you, Angie. I appreciate it. Yeah, if they're not connected with me, reach out on LinkedIn. We are doing free workshops and webinars almost weekly at this point. So I would love to have you come and visit and check out some of our content.
That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick-Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.